There have been a lot of haters of this show, and I don't really understand. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another one of my TV show reviews. Today we are talking about Castlevania Nocturne. The first season just dropped a couple of days ago, and I got to watch it all in one sitting. And for me, personally, it was a fantastic time. I enjoyed it so much. I thought it was such an amazing season. But before we get into the details, I'll give you my spoiler warning right here, and I'll be talking about the ending and everything, so make sure you get yourself caught up before you watch my video. But with that said, let's get into the review. So like I just said, I finished the season all in one sitting because basically it was a 2-hour movie-ish. There's 8 episodes and each episode is about 25 minutes, so it's a very easy binge. And of course, I have to mention the animation. I think at this point the Castlevania animation team has just set the standard so high that it's kind of obvious that their animation is good, but I still have to mention it because it was just so good. Chef's kiss all around. I mean, the amount of action and the amount of magic every episode was just everything I could ask for, especially at the end when they were in the church and they were teaming up against Drolta, and just the amount of combos they were using with each other and their own magic. It was just it gave me chills. And along with that, the character designs for this show, I feel like honestly is better than the original Castlevania. Part of it is because of this new setting in France, and the aesthetic is more of this Victorian vampire aesthetic. Specific shoutouts for characters include Drolta. I mean, her wardrobe was just so fire. She was turning it out every single costume that she wore. Also, Elizabeth literally looked like a goddess. She wasn't even lying about that. And then when she turned into Sekhmet and her face became this lioness, I was like, wow. They look so good. And also when Edouard became a night creature and the hands were over his eyes, that was insane. That was so cool. I mean, just 10 out of 10 character design, honestly. And speaking of this French setting, it's really interesting to me how the vampires have kind of made an alliance with the humans in France, and vampires are a part of the aristocracy, and their culture has kind of blended to adapt to human society. A lot more of the show has real world references like the French Revolution, the American Revolution, slavery, racism. I think there's a lot more real life topics in the show than the first Castlevania. And the pacing of the show is really fast. Basically, an entire arc is covered this first season, unlike Castlevania where it might take 2 seasons just for one arc to be completed, and sometimes one season just like not that much happens. This show, every episode is action packed. You get a lot of information at you all at once, and I think some people might not like that, but I didn't mind so much because especially how long it takes for shows to come out these days, I'm very impatient, so it was really nice to get just everything I could ask for and beyond in this one single season. And kind of because the pacing is way faster, everyone also starts out way stronger. They don't really take the time to gradually scale up everyone's power. Everyone just kind of starts off stronger, and everyone knows their abilities already. Of course, some people still go through a transformation like Richter, and we'll talk about that later. But the main characters are stronger, the vampires are stronger, even like the night creatures are stronger. And to me, I don't really mind the journey in the beginning, establishing their powers, because I feel like I'm already familiar with the world of Castlevania, so I don't need to see how they train and how they get more powerful. It's kind of like how in Avatar: The Last Airbender, you see all of the characters kind of learning their powers from scratch, right? But then in the Legend of Korra, which I know a lot of people hate, the characters start off with more of their powers already. Now let's talk a little bit about the characters themselves. I thought Richter was a really fun character. I loved how different he was from Trevor, not only in terms of just his character design, but also the voice performance was really well done. He felt much different, yet undeniably still a Belmont. I like that he was way more emotional than Trevor. I think it makes him a little more relatable, and you can see that he has more flaws, because whenever I saw Trevor, I was like, oh, he's safe, you know, he's got it in the bag. But for Richter, I was like, wow, he really could lose this battle. Also, we have to talk about the moment when he got his magic back, where he was almost about to get killed by a gang of vampires, but then he put on his headband and everything started glowing blue, and he had his blue flames. chills, literally chills on my body. That was such a well done moment, and I loved it. To me, Annette was one of the coolest characters on the show, and I know that might be controversial, and I'll talk more about the criticisms of the show at the end of this video, but for now I just want to talk about how I thought Annette was really cool. I didn't play the game, so I didn't know Annette was supposed to be this like blonde character, so I didn't even know she was race bent. But any characters with the ability to earth bend or metal bend is always so useful because there's earth all around you and metal is everywhere. And so the applications of this power is kind of limitless, and her lore with having these African deities be a part of her and using this ancient magic was just such an interesting concept. And also the way her backstory about being born a slave told through the lens of magic and vampires and gods was something I haven't really seen before, especially in animation. I thought that was one of the most impactful scenes of the show for me so far. Also, one moment of Annette's that stood out for me was when she was stitching up Maria's wounds, but through almost like a voodoo doll, and I was like, that is so interesting, and I think is just another extension of her powers that we got to see. Another character I want to mention is Olrox. At the beginning, when he killed Richter's mother, obviously we're supposed to root against him. He's supposed to be the big bad, but he turns out to actually be a quite useful ally to the team. He seems to be truly a neutral character, an anarchist, just someone for himself, and I grew to really like his character, especially when he talked about his boyfriend that was killed by Richter's mother and how he was an indigenous man in America who still chose to be a part of the American Revolution to fight for the freedom from the British. I thought just his backstory was really well done, and I didn't expect it from someone who it was supposed to be painted as this villain immediately. Also, the fact that he's a vampire dragon, oh, that was just so cool, and also something I haven't seen before. Also, the fact that Olrox actually has a heart, even though he kind of says otherwise on the outside, he actually cares about people, and he's definitely more complex than other vampires. Also, we got to see a brief cameo from Juste Belmont, who I'm not very familiar with, but I understand that he was also the protagonist of a few games. I didn't really like his character all that much. He just was, first of all, he was only on screen for about 5 minutes, and his whole thing was telling Richter how to be pessimistic in the world, how evil will always win, and then he didn't even end up helping the group at all. So I really didn't like Juste. I hope he comes back next season and maybe gets a redemption of some sort. Now let's talk about sweet Edouard. I love that his whole character is supposed to use magic to kind of touch people's souls and restore the souls and humanity left in the other night creatures. I think we got to see a little bit of that theme in the original Castlevania when Isaac was talking to one of his night creature creations, how there was a little bit of humanity left, but I think this is the furthest extent of humanity within a night creature that we've seen so far, and the fact that Edouard is almost able to convert other night creatures to remember who they were is a very interesting concept. I also think it's interesting to see how the art of being a forge master is being lost. I mean, Isaac was so dedicated to his craft, but now when the abbot was being the forge master, he was using an industrial machine. So it's interesting to see how forge masters are becoming industrialized, and it's losing the root of how it became this type of art, according to Isaac at least. And now let's talk a little bit about the ending, because that ending was crazy. First of all, R.I.P. Tara. I thought she was a really great character, especially just as in terms of being a support character for both Richter, and it hurt a lot to see her just get killed off like that. Her line about "I am the ram" to Abbott was very emotional, and I am going to be sad to see her in the future as this vampire creature, but I get a feeling she will probably still have a little bit of humanity left in her. And man, Abbott is just, he was such a flop. I cannot believe he got Maria and Tara in that situation. He just, kill him off, please, kill him off. And then of course, Alucard coming back and saving the group. Definitely a very hype moment, but it was very much a Deus Ex Machina moment. You know, not the greatest in terms of writing, but it was still hype to see Alucard come back, especially in his updated outfit and his art style. I definitely clapped when I saw him, and I'm very, very excited to see him continue this journey with the rest of the group. And I'd like to give a shout out to Ursabet as well. She truly seems like a threat, to the point where I don't even know how the characters will defeat her, even with the addition of Alucard. We didn't get to see as much of her powers just yet, but in terms of being intimidated by her, for sure, similar to how I felt with Dracula. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about the criticisms that the show has received. So one thing is, people are saying that the show is too vulgar and they just throw in a lot of crude language and a lot of the dialogue is cringy. Maybe they could scale back on their profanity, but I didn't mind, because it kind of reminded me of how the original Castlevania 2, didn't they curse a lot in there? I mean, I don't really mind at all. And then in terms of cringy dialogue, yeah, there were a few moments that have not the best dialogue, but honestly, I have seen worse. Like, I truly have seen worse. And the biggest complaint is about Annette. So, full disclosure, I have not played the original Castlevania games, so I didn't know Annette was race swapped and completely changed up. Basically, nothing about her is the same except for her name. And I understand a lot of people are upset about that because they want their, favorite characters to come back to this adaptation. But for someone who hasn't seen or played the games, I thought Annette was a really good character. And people are complaining that she was making fun of Richter a lot, and how Maria was also making fun of Richter a lot, but the Belmonts are supposed to be this respected group of people. I actually enjoyed the banter. I enjoyed the jokes at Richter's expense, because he just seemed like the guy who just really doesn't care. And it totally makes sense in terms of Annette's backstory and who she is to say things like that. And obviously a part of her doesn't really mean it towards Richter, because there might be a little romance between them. And I've said in my other reviews, expectation is king. So if you have played the games and you came in with the expectation of all these characters, all these backstories, all these plot lines that will happen, I think that will probably kill your experience a lot. Going in this blind, not even knowing who really Richter was, not knowing who Annette was, I thought all these characters were very well done. And I have a question for those of you that really have something against Annette. Would it have been better if we just changed her name entirely and treated her just as this completely original character? Maybe that wouldn't taint Annette's name as much in your eyes. Now let me quickly just rank the characters in terms of how much I like them and how much of an impact they had on me while watching it. So number one is Annette. Some of y'all are going to be really mad about that, but I really liked Annette, and sometimes part of the show she felt like the main character. She got a lot of backstory, and her powers are so diverse, and she's so powerful. I think she was awesome. For my number 2 placement, I'm going to put Olrox. I love a true anarchist. I love someone who is morally ambiguous, and he's also just kind of a badass. He's so powerful, I don't even know if the group could handle him. My third character is Edouard. At first, I didn't really care for him. I thought it was sad that he died. I thought it was silly that he was just singing in the prison. But towards the end, when he really gained his consciousness back and he knew exactly who he was and how he still wanted a purpose in the world, I thought he was really cool. And I think I am a little biased because of just how his character is designed. It just looks so cool. My 4th placing is Richter. I think he's a great lead. I think the moment when he put on the headbands and got his magic back, that was a top tier moment. I just think he was a little limited by his backstory with how his mother died and his trauma with Olrox, and he didn't really get to expand as much as I wanted him to, but I'm sure we'll get the chance in the future seasons. After that, I'll put Tara. I thought she was also a great character, about how her backstory, where she ran away from Ursabet and how she had to kill her own sister. I thought that was awesome, and then how she sacrificed herself for Maria, and I'm very excited for how she will move on. Speaking of Maria, Maria is after Tara. I just think Maria is not as complex as some of the other characters, but her power set is still really awesome, and I am excited to see how her powers grow even more. And I heard that she has a dragon in her bag, so I hope we get to see that. After Maria is Abbott. I could not stand this man. He pissed me off at every twist and turn, but I can't even lie and say he wasn't a good antagonist. I mean, he really kept the plot going. He really drove the drama between the characters, and I thought he was an important character to this season at least. And last but not least is Mizrak. He wasn't even really part of the main cast, but he definitely got a little bit more to do towards the end. I think he's interesting in just how devoted he is to his religion. I think he might become a little jaded after that, sort of like how Isaac was. But overall, I'm going to rate the season a 9 out of 10. I know that's a pretty high rating for me, and it's going to seem blasphemous to some of y'all OG Castlevania fans, but I really liked it. But what did you guys think? Did you hate the season? Are you an original Castlevania fan who is not here for Annette? But regardless, share your thoughts down below. If you like my content, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on my future videos. And as always, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out, everyone.